Social Media News Live. I'm so excited. I'm also missing being able to go to the UK. I was like, it was 2 years ago that I got to go and speak at Janet Murray, who we have as our guest today, at her event. I had so much fun. That was the first time I'd ever been in London, and I so want to go back. So, Janet, I'm so excited that you're here. It's like I'm almost there.
Thanks so much for having me, but it is raining, of course.
Yes.
So it's been really lovely. It's been so hot, and and then suddenly it just started raining again.
That's London for you. So if you guys are joining us, what we're going to do, we would love for you guys to sprinkle the love all across the interwebs as we're talking, because it's going to be, I know Janet, I know she is one of the smartest people when it comes to this content marketing stuff. So I think it's going to be really, really helpful. And if you know somebody who's like, man, I know that my friend over here is really struggling with this, feel free to mention them down below, call them into the conversation. Even if they can't make it here live, it's great for them to come and interact later on. So just feel free to mention them down below. And by the way, to get reminders about this podcast, and this live show, make sure you go and text us at 903-287-9088. That's 903-287-9088. That we don't spam, but it kind of helps us get around those pesky algorithms, and we can let you know all about this show. I want to do some shout outs for some people here. Liz says, love Jeff and Janet, excited for this episode. Liz, it is so good to see you. I haven't talked to you in a while. It's awesome. And she is awesome because she said shared. Awesome, Liz. Thank you for that. Yay. And Jason says, sweet. That's right. It is sweet. Janet's sweet. We're going to give you all sorts of sweet content today. So it's going to be amazing. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and hit the go on the podcast machine, get it started, and we will get cracking on this show. And feel free to ask your questions as we're going along, because I'd love to make this show all about you, and get those questions answered by Janet. So let me hit go on the podcast machine. And also, because I forgot, I needed to do Amazon Live. Yes. Let's go live. There we go. So we're going live on Amazon as well. So here we go.
Woohoo! Okay.
Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
I'm Grace Duffy, and this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media. Today's show is brought to you by Restream, the best way to live stream to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Amazon Live, and 30 plus other online destinations all at once. So you can expand your audience with multi-streaming today. Learn more about it at socialmedianewslive.com/Restream.
Awesome. Today we are going to be joined by Janet Murray, and we're going to be talking about cutting through the content overwhelm and getting seen online. We're going to explore how to effectively, efficiently, and consistently produce good content that makes it to the right distribution channels for every size of business or company. And we mentioned earlier Restream, amazing sponsor, but we're also sponsored by our friends over on Ecamm. That's how we do this awesome show, have this amazing layout. So if you want to find out more about them, make sure you guys go to socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. That's socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. So if you don't know who Janet Murray is, she is amazing. She is actually a friend of mine, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, but she's a content marketer. She's an expert at that. She's an author. She's a podcaster and a keynote speaker who has spoken all over the world about building online audiences. She's helped thousands of coaches, creatives, entrepreneurs learn how to create engaging content so they can build their online audiences and make more sales in their businesses. And she's also creator of the 2021 Social Media Diary and Planner. So if you haven't checked that out, you really need to, because it's amazing. So Janet, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's been too long since we've been able to talk. So I'm so excited you guys can tune in today. In fact, our friend Ian Anderson Gray goes, "It's Janet." So he's excited as well. He was there with me at that conference. And our friend Sabrina is also here. She is there. Hello, it's me, Sabrina. Hello, Sabrina. It's Jeff. I'm so glad to see you. So let's get started. Grace, I know you had some questions to kick this off.
Well, yeah, let's kick off this show by talking about the content marketing landscape in general. So more than ever before, we are completely inundated with a flood of content online, everywhere else. We saw this spike in 2020 as people flocked online for everything from happy hours to classes, performances, and even church, church meeting, meeting up for church, and then like fitness, everything. So now we're at this point where we are both challenged by ensuring that we are creating good content. And as you said at the top of the show, Jeff, that it is effectively and efficiently and consistently being created. And isn't that just the challenge? And then on top of that, you have to make sure that it is going to the right places, getting to the right places. There's so many places you can go to, like apps, web, television, live streaming video, print, mobile. Our show right now, we distribute as a podcast afterwards. So Janet, can you tell us how your business, since you are a content marketing expert, this is your space, how has it adapted over the past year, and how do you see it evolving throughout this coming year, throughout the rest of this year, 2020, and going into 2021 going into 2022?
For me personally, this is the year of the short form video. So it's about Reels, it's about TikToks, and it's about being able to share your message in these really short, snappy videos. So I've got really into Instagram Reels this year, particularly TikTok as well. And I'm really excited about that type of content and the challenges for us as content creators to be able to create really engaging content, short form video, like really, really short. I think that's where it's at. And I'm really excited to see where that goes over the next year or so. And it's a lot of fun. It's very challenging. So for me, yeah, short form video is where it's at.
So button. Okay, sorry. So there are folks who create a fire hose of content and, have like this team like supporting them doing it. So like Gary Vee, BuzzFeed, and all those people. So how can like the little brands like me or solo entrepreneurs in the same space compete with that? How can we enter the ring and like get seen above all this noise?
It's always come down to niching or niching, as you might say, depending on where you are in the world, and not being vanilla, basically, and looking at how you can stand out, which just sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But just like with you, Jeff, like we've got people who specialize in Pinterest, and then we've got the Manly Pinterest podcast, and that brand. And I think that, it's been an ongoing problem for content creators, is just that a lot of people are too scared to be different, and they're too scared to have a different opinion. They're too scared to show up in a different way. And I think, as ever, it's always been about showing up in that really kind of authentic way for you. And that probably sounds a bit naff, doesn't it? Authentic, but you know what I mean. But,
right, I know.
But kind of being you. And I think the rise of, again, come back to short form video like TikTok and Instagram. I'm really interested, and as a content creator myself, I'm much more interested in what people who are creating. Let me rephrase that. I'm less interested in, say, what Gary Vee is doing than what your average content creator who's just started a platform just because they're interested in creating a particular type of content, or they want to experiment. So some of the people I follow on TikTok, for example, I follow a TikToking nun who dances on TikTok. I follow this guy who in the UK who he works on a farm, and he does really exciting things, like shows us, lambing, and shows little baby lambs being born, and shows us around the farm, but also then does TikTok dances. I think you might remember the whole thing with oh my god, what are they called, the folky songs, what were they called, the sea shanties, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the whole sea shanty thing that went viral on TikTok, I like to say that I was ahead of the curve, because I was watching sea shanties because I like music. And I kind of saw that happen. I saw that guy just showing up with his guitar and creating this really engaging content, and then it just taking off. And what I think we can learn from almost like non-marketers is these kind of people, they often just turn up and they create content because they've got a passion for a particular topic, and they learn how to engage their audience almost on the job, if you like.
Right.
And they create really engaging content, and they respond to what their audience wants. And I feel like they're the people that I'm looking for when it comes to inspiration for content. They're the kind of people I'm looking towards, probably not your marketing gurus or Gary V's or whatever. Sorry, Gary. But,
yeah.
And it's not about volume, is it? It's about the impact that you make. And it's about that kind of content comes from a really honest, genuine place. Like, I've got the stuff that I want to talk about, these things that I want to share, and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to have fun. I'm seeing a lot more fun, people having a lot more fun creating their content, which is good. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I totally agree. And the question I also want to ask is, because now do you, because there's this thought also from back to the marketing angle of content creation versus curation. So do you share out like to your audience the Dancing Nun and say, hey, this is a great thing? I mean, because I know there's a balance, and I know a lot of people talked about, you got to curate content, but you also got to create it, and you have to have a balance. What are your thoughts on that? Is that switch? Do we need to even curate content anymore, or should we just worry about creating it?
Well, I guess I can draw on my own experience of using content curation, I should say, in my own marketing to build. I really grew my Instagram account very, very quickly last year, I think it was, in the back end of 2019, by curation. So by sharing memes and inspirational quotes. But I feel like with anything with content and trends, people start to get to tire a little bit of the same type of content. And I'm not there's still lots of meme accounts about,
right?
But I think maybe people are actually getting a bit tired of that kind of mode of content. And I grew an account of mine really quickly because I'm always experimenting. I'm always trying things out really quickly by sharing like really good quotes, other people's. And for a while I was really saying to people, like, you don't have to create this content yourself. You can curate other people's really amazing content. But actually, I think we are seeing a shift towards original content and more personality-based content, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. So, back to your question about the TikToking nun. Well, I mean, I do share that sort of content with my audience, but if I was just to put that in my story and say, "Hey, look at this TikToking nun," then people would kind of laugh and say, "Oh, that's fun and that's great." But actually, I think it's kind of my job to set that in context. So maybe by grabbing an interview with the TikToking nun, I'm still waiting to see if she says yes, or by including that kind of content, say in my own podcast or something. So I think curating, just sharing other people's content, I think that was something that was working really well for a while. But I feel, or I'm certainly seeing, that people are kind of tiring of that and they're wanting much more original content. And again, as people have got much more into Reels and TikToks, where people are creating really original personality-based content, I do see that it's becoming less attractive, I think, that type of curation. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it all comes down to, and it's a struggle. It's always been a struggle for brands and businesses to show that personal side and use that to story. I think one of the reasons, TikTok and this short form content has taken off, like Reels, like you mentioned, is it's storytelling, but condensed. There's a beginning and their end to each one of those, TikToks, and it makes you laugh, or it shows you insight or behind the scenes, or it's Janet doing a dance, which you wouldn't expect, when you see that stuff on a reel. But, so I think that, and I think, but it's also showing behind, even if if I did a dance on TikTok, people would watch that because it's like, oh my gosh, Jeff is dancing. It's just, it is behind the scenes. It's like, what in the world? And so I think that I do agree that it's kind of on the forefront. And I know we're going to get on some of this a little bit later, but I want to bring up some of our friends' comments. Charles says over on YouTube, he goes, impact. It's all about impact. Yes, totally agree. Yes. And he also says, he thinks that was a great question. Well, thank you, Charles. He says, I think people ultimately want more of you, the creator. And that's hard. That's hard being out there. I mean, even going live is hard, but I think you are on the right idea there. And Dustin, our friend Dustin, says, I think curation depends on the platform. Some platforms are less appropriate for curating, for example, YouTube. So Dustin's over watching over YouTube. Thank you, Dustin. But yeah, that is very, very true, because you don't see a lot of, there are channels which, and I have fought against some of the, not fought against, but I had conversations with people about, there's some people who all they do, it seems like they curate like those real famous speakers and not steal, but pretty much, and they build channels around that. And I'm like, that's, those succeed too. So yeah, you're right, Dustin. It depends on the platform, but yeah. So, and he goes like, but platforms like Pinterest are still heavily about curation. So awesome stuff today, you guys. I'm so glad. Thank you for your comments. Keep them coming, and ask your questions to Janet, because she is super smart about all this stuff. But I wanted to get into this first segment that we're going to talk about, kind of this content management and strategy. The big wave is here. Grace, break this down for us.
Yeah, so this was new research from our friends over at the Content Marketing Institute. So for the 5th year in a row, they published their 2021 Content Management and Strategy Survey, which is really focused on how marketers are using technology tools to create, manage, deliver, and scale enterprise content and marketing. So this, of course, is the enterprise level, but I believe this does relate to businesses of any size. They also examined how content teams use people, processes, to precisely target and engage their audiences to create this valuable customer experience. And we'll talk more about what they mean by valuable customer experience in just a second here. But I found the stat really interesting. They said about 40% of respondents said that their organization aren't using their existent content technology to its potential. Now, some of the reasons cited is that integration issues, lack of training, and a lack of communication about the capabilities, which is not really surprising given the rush to adopt new technologies over this past year, given the huge shift to more collaborative solutions, as a reaction to remote work. We've also seen a lot more people freelancing, launching new businesses. New entrepreneurs have launched all over the place this past year. And so, Janet, as an entrepreneur yourself and a consultant to other businesses, how do you navigate this conundrum when it comes to technology? How do you determine what will be able to create content better and help build your business? I know, as someone who works in the marketing department of a company, I am inundated with tools all day long, and I don't even have time to really assess them, figure out what's going on, and just and I'm a very hands-on person. I like to try something and try, test, break. So that's my strategy, but I don't know that that's really a good use of my time.
I kind of feel like it always comes back to the content. So I think people are always looking for the latest tool. Number one question I get asked is what's the best social media scheduling tool, or what's the best way for me to automate this particular process, like email marketing. Everybody gets, or certainly most people I work with, get so bogged down in, should I be using MailChimp? Should I be using Infusionsoft? Should I be using all of these kind of, email marketing softwares? Which is the right one? Which is the best one? But actually, to do email marketing well, you don't even need any of this stuff. For me, it's more about the strategy. So for example, with email marketing, one of the things I'm always trying to get my clients to do is to do looked not bought sequences. So when somebody checks out one of your products or services, and you send them an email saying, hey, I noticed you were checking out my product or service, can I answer any questions or whatever? It's a really good sales strategy, but it's just follow up. And I will have clients who will just for years will hold back on doing that, because they'll say, well, it's difficult for me to get the automation set up, or I'm not sure whether I should be on ConvertKit, or I'm not sure whether I should be on ActiveCampaign or whatever. And I'm like, but you don't need the tech to do that, to chase somebody up who's checked out your product or service and to have a conversation with them. You don't need that. So obviously I'm a big fan of tech, and we're always looking at how we can improve. One of the things that I've been looking at this year is how to organize my content better. We've just started using Airtable, but ultimately me having Airtable, for example, isn't going to make up for my content not being very engaging. And so I'm always back to, is the content engaging? Is it allowing you to have conversations with people? Automation is great. It can make your life easier, but the first thing is always getting the content right.
I think that's a great point. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you have, thousands and thousands of dollars of tools. If your content stinks, then it doesn't really matter, Yeah.
Yeah.
So following on that technology question, another finding in that report indicates that teams are becoming more focused on their owned content marketing platforms like their websites and their blogs than reacting to like internal reactionary requests. So have you found this to be the case about your own client? Like, are they starting to like really dive in deep on their own stuff and not worrying about that other stuff? Or what have you been finding?
I find that it's still a challenge to get people to build an audience on their own land. So to get people to publish on their website, to publish YouTube videos, like, turn them into a blog post on the website. So podcast, make sure that's all on the website, because it's harder, isn't it? And the results, it takes longer to see the results. So I could make an Instagram reel today that people really like, and I could have a viral reel this afternoon, and I'm getting that feedback, or just a couple of thousand views that are going to make me feel better, or a sale, or somebody's going to get in touch with me. I think the thing about getting people to build an audience on their website, on their own land, if you like, is huge for me, and it's always been really important for me. But it's a longer game, isn't it? I still have people who get in touch with me about things I wrote years ago and ask me if I'll do work for them, things I wrote on my blog years ago. I have some blog posts that make sales for me every single day, but it's a long game, isn't it? And you can't put something up on your blog or on your podcast that you publish on your website or whatever and expect to be top of Google, the next day. And so I think that's always, for me, for the smaller business owner, that's always a harder sell, because it's about playing a long game. Social media gives you that short-term hit, doesn't it? And it can give you that short-term feedback that your content is good. But with content that you're creating on your own platforms, I'm 100%, totally always trying to persuade my clients that it's really worth doing, because that's what will bring them leads and sales further down the line for years to come, along with their email marketing. But for me, it is always a harder sell, because I think we're in a society. The report really interested me from that point of view. I wonder if people are saying what they think people want them to say, rather than actually what's really going on. I don't know, but I feel like it's all. You have to really play a long game with that side of things. It's well worth it, but I think social media makes it so easy to say, I tell you what, I'll just do another social media post, because then I'll get that immediate feedback that I'm doing okay.
So that's the thing that I've always said too, is like, it's great to have a TikTok video that goes viral. My son's girlfriend has some that have gone viral. No sales, nothing. It's, if it doesn't have a place for you for them to land, where you actually are converting them, getting them on your list, or selling them something, and then, that those social posts, just like you said, really doesn't matter. Since we've been talking about tech and some other things, I wanted to ask and see if, like, and because I've been to your conference, I know you're really big on list building and building that email list. And like for us, we have this text message that we send out reminders before the show at, I'll just say 903-287-9088. Is SMS something that would be another way to do that? Are there any other new technologies that you're exploring that kind of works with that email list building kind of philosophy?
Yeah, and obviously using messenger apps is huge, and obviously text messaging can be part of that as well. So it's certainly something that I use in my own business. I've got early access. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say, but I've got early access to an Instagram messenger feature. So I've been getting to try out lots of cool stuff on Instagram, delivering lead magnets to people, and as part of that, we can use text messaging as well. So I think messaging is going to continue to be huge, both on social media platforms, but also by text. And what I love about it is obviously that you can reach people in different ways. So people can go to my Instagram if you want to. You can go and click on my Instagram and try this out. But my messenger will deliver you my lead magnet, and then we'll follow up with you via email. And I love the way that all of those different ways of different methods of communication, I guess, can interact with each other. I've just created a new quiz for an audience growth quiz, and that will you do the little quiz in my messenger, either on Facebook or Instagram, and then it will deliver those results via email. And then if you want to, if you're going to come to a webinar or something like that, you could then get a reminder by text. So I think also the more choices we have to say how we want to be communicated with as well. So some of us prefer text messages, don't know, some people prefer messenger, and I love the way that all of that tech can interact with each other, and how you can have a conversation with somebody on social media, and using that kind of tech, they can be on your email list, and you can be nurturing that new person within seconds. So that's all really exciting, I think. And I think there's lots of new developments coming there.
Awesome. So there's a couple questions I wanted to bring up. First of all, Charles says, great information being shared here. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. And Hilton says, Instagram DM automation was open to the public on the 2nd of June. So that is a relatively new thing. Thank you, Hilton, for sharing that with us. A question here is, this is a long one, so it's going to. So this is from Marino. Says, we've been dealing with content marketing so far, and to me, it seems like we've got to the edge of that era, since all social media are flooded with content, mostly useless for businesses. Now we've come to understand that mass marketing is made out of smaller and smaller niches. What is the next big thing? So, do you think the next big thing, answering kind of Marino's question there, is that it is those messenger, and then as the AI and that kind of stuff develops, it will become more and more personal? Is that what you think kind of the next big thing would be?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think it's about, again, short form content. So being able to, I'm a big fan as a writer by trade. I'm a big fan of being able to say what you need to say, or get across what you need to say in the least amount of words possible, or the least, in the medium that is most accessible to you. So yeah, definitely, I feel that's where we're going. But I also feel what I love about all of this is the accessibility part of it, because I think communication, being able to choose the way that you want to be the way you want to be marketed to, even like, I want you to market to me via text message, or I prefer you to market to me via email, or whatever it is, be able to kind of appeal to people's learning styles, I guess, or the way that people communicate. I think that's really, really powerful. And everything's just so much easier now, isn't it? Just to be able to kind of, pull out your phone and create a short welcome video to make things feel much more personal. Really, I love the fact that everything is getting more and more personalized, and more down to people's personal preferences, that we can have more influence over that. And I also love the fact that everything's shorter and more accessible, and we can have that information delivered to us in a medium that we most, that we find the most accessible.
That's a good point. Good point. So, Grace, did you have a question, or are we ready for the next section? I can't remember.
I think we're ready for the next section.
Okay,
I had the same question as Marino, so good job, Marino. Thank you so much for asking that. That was a good one. So the next segment we want to talk about is creating truly great content experiences that succeed at scale. So we're looking, as we're researching for this show, I came across this article in Marketing Profs. It's titled "The 3 New Rules for Content Experience" by Randy Frisch. And in this article, Randy cites a 2021 B2B marketing report, which addresses this enormous disconnect that seemed to be happening between what marketers are prioritizing versus what buyers truly want, given this new space in which we are completely inundated with marketing content, and it's getting harder to create that stuff that engages and entices for your audience. So to start, buyers do not want to be sold to, according to the study. They want to be educated, and the study found that more than half of buyers are what they find useful is user reviews, product tours, and videos. But guess what marketers prioritize? Sales sheets, white papers, and ebooks, which we all know are those lead magnets we're all supposed to be creating, right? And so, and customers also want a solution-focused content, and they want it to be relevant, and they want it to be timely. So how do we create these personalized content experiences that are both timely and relevant, but also at scale? It's like that project management triangle I saw in business school of like, what is it, like something could be like quick,
Oh yeah.
done well,
Easy.
yeah. What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I feel like now we've pulled that triangle apart. So we want it all. How do we get it all, Janet?
I think it just comes back to the principles, which I like to think we've been using for years, which is just listening to your audience and just talking to them and asking them what it is that they want and how they want you to talk to them. I certainly noticed a shift in my own content where educational content is what people want. They want you to educate them not only about the problems that they're having that maybe your products or services solve, and they want you to educate them about your products and to tell them more and be able to ask questions and to find out more. I had a really interesting conversation actually the other day with a client who was talking about how she was posting on LinkedIn and she was getting loads of engagement. She'd been following my strategies, which is just about starting conversations. Obviously, just got to stick that in. But she was saying, but I feel like I should be putting sales posts out. She's like, I'm getting loads of engagement. People are really getting involved in the conversations that I'm starting, but I'm just like, where's the sales post? And I said to her, you don't have to put a single sales post out ever. Like, as long as people are reaching out to you and want to work with you, which is happening to her, you don't ever have to put any sales posts out ever. Like, if you're starting interesting conversations, if people see you as a resource, if they just want to be in your community, if you like. I mean, I think community is becoming more and more important. Like, I feel like we've always talked about social media in the past as just being like almost like a TV station or a radio station where we just broadcast at people. Whereas when I talk about like my main product is build your online audience, and in a way I wish I'd called it build your online community, because that's really building an audience is this idea, isn't it, of like you getting up there and talking to people and telling people how it is and what to do and whatever. Whereas actually really it should be build your online community, because that's what people, even when they're buying products and services, they're buying into your community, aren't they? They want to be part of your world. And I do think in a really noisy world, people want to be entertained, I think, much more in their content, and they want to be educated, they want to have conversations, they want to feel part of your community. And I think that's where we're at. And I think, Jeff, your original question was about how do you create that at scale? That was what you asked, wasn't it? And it's difficult, isn't it? Because I was actually creating some content earlier, and I was thinking, I know this is going to be out of date, like really soon. And I was thinking to myself, like, should I create this content? Because it's actually like a 3-part podcast. And I was thinking, should I create this content? Because I know that even though my audience want this now and they want this information like today, but it's going to be out of date, and I'm going to have to include a bit that says, oh, by the way, if you're listening, even in a few months' time, it might be out of date. And I'm thinking, should I not create that content because it's inconvenient for me, because I might have to update it, or I might have to. But then I thought to myself, well, no, again, this is about my ideal clients and customers, and they really want this information. So yes, it's a bit more inconvenient for me. So I feel like we are having to be more responsive. And I do think that this short form content, which I talked about at the beginning, these reels and TikToks, they give us a way to actually educate people. Like today, instead of having to wait, somebody asks me a question about how do you do this on Instagram or whatever, I can create that content for them today, and I can post it today, rather than them having to wait for my podcast in 6 weeks or whatever, because it's scheduled. And it's always a bit of a balance. But then I think, well, you can integrate that content. So I've been integrating the content. So I've been creating my Instagram reels. I've been using that in my podcasts and finding ways to repurpose it, if you like. So I think that perhaps the days of planning content months and months ahead
are gone.
That might not be, I personally feel consumers are, they're looking for you to be more responsive, because that's the world that we live in.
I totally, I think I agree with that, because like for this show, a lot of times the news we get planned and a guest like, 2 days before we go live, because we want to keep it relevant and keep it, what's going on. We looked at F8. We thought about talking about that today. Really wasn't exciting. So that's why we kind of switched it up on Janet. And she's like, by the way, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this instead. So because I knew she was good and I knew that a lot of people needed to hear this. So not only do marketers have to think about, their content creation, we've talked about that a lot, but they also need to consider distribution and the destination. So what do you tell your clients? Like if someone were to take this moment to maybe reevaluate the distribution and their experience portion of their content marketing approach, how would they go about doing that? Where would you tell them to start?
So the first thing I always get my clients to look at is niche. Well, actually, just to start off and say, well, what is it that I'm trying to achieve here, and who is it I need to reach in order to do this? So I guess there's two parts to it, and then it's kind of like, okay, so who are my audience basically, and what do I need to say to them, and what's the best way to reach them? Now, I have clients sometimes who literally will hold off creating any kind of like evergreen style content on their website because they are desperate to know the answer to this question, right? Which is, what's better, YouTube or podcast? And I'm always like, well, and they're reading all the reports and I'm saying that the best one is the one that you can stick to. So if you might read that YouTube's where it's at and that's where you should be or whatever, but actually if that's too much for you, it's too overwhelming and there's too many pieces to it and you've not really done it before, but it's easier for you to just plug in your mic and record a podcast, that's what you should do. And if writing's easier for you, there's still a place for written blogs as well. But I think that often people are wanting to wait for somebody to tell them that this is the right content form, this is the right way that you should be doing it. But actually, ultimately, it comes back to your audience. Like, who are they? What do they need to hear from you? What's the best medium for that? I find that there's usually an audience for whatever you sell on whatever platform, so what you feel comfortable with. If you hate video, starting a YouTube channel, a lot of people do get better at it, but some people are just never really going to be video people, but they might be good at audio, or they might really excel on a blog. So I think it's a combination between, what is it your audience needs to hear from you? And then it's about choosing a platform that you feel comfortable on and that you can stick to. I think a lot of people are just trying to do it the right way and trying to kind of say, well, that person does it like that, or that, and actually it's got to suit you. It's got to suit your lifestyle. It's got to suit the way that you work and your personality. So that would always be the first place that I would start. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. And so I always tell people, like, I don't know why I do this live video thing, because I have a face that is made for Photoshop. So it's perfect. So, but it seems to be working. So one of the things, and I'm going to fanboy a little bit, but one of the, you mentioned talking about like providing value and having people, not doing the sales stuff. And like I fanboy about Lou Mongello all the time, but he talks about, he just goes lives and provides value. And he has built up this humongous community around, his Disney and going into the parks, and, it's very popular, but he's got these community that support him and make him, he has a great living from this, and he doesn't ever really sell. I mean, he mentions his stuff, but that is really hard for businesses, I think, to get their mind around. So we talked about it a little bit, but circle around, and what do you tell clients? Like you mentioned the lady who was on Instagram, and she was like, I never do sales stuff. Do you tell them never to do sales stuff, or do you have a formula that you give them, like, 1 out of 10 posts, maybe you can do a sales thing? What do you tell clients?
Yeah, that's another thing everyone wants to know. Like, exactly what percentage, Janet, of my post should be sales posts?
Right.
and tell me exactly. And I'm like, well, it really depends, doesn't it? And it depends on what you're selling. It depends on who your audience is. Also, it might depend on, when you're big launching something, you might do a lot more salesy posts. And, when you're not big on launching something, you might do less. You might be in a phase where you're audience building. So everybody wants like the magic answer. And there isn't one, unfortunately. I wish there was, because my job would be a lot easier. And I mean, I don't do a lot of salesy posts. I tend to favor more like it's like community based. So I've just launched a podcast, and I know, I mean, the stats tell me that if I just post loads of stuff like, hey, listen to my new podcast, like, that's me, that's about me. It's not about my audience. So I will do lots of things. So I had a wait list. So I wrapped up my old podcast in April, and I had a wait list, and I had a podcast wrap up party and a wait list. And then I've been building that wait list for a couple of months. And then when it came to choosing the artwork and the cover, got people to vote on the covers and got people to give me feedback on what content I should create for them. I think it's really powerful if you can get people involved in the creation of your products and services, and they feel invested in it. Like, I sell this diary, and every year we have a thing where people get to vote on the covers. And so that, we whittle it down to 8, and then people vote, and they're like, oh, was mine in the top one? And so it's about kind of getting people involved in the journey with you. The other thing I think a lot of people don't do is, people, in order to buy, like, I think it's Chris Ducker always says, it's a really good way of putting it, but people love to buy, but they don't like to be sold to, which is so true. But so in order to get people to buy from us, they need to desire our products or services. And I think that's, so you can create desire by doing some of the things that I was just talking about there, like getting people involved in the creation process. But people have to want to hold your product in their hands, or they have to see themselves at your restaurant, or they have to want to wear the clothes or whatever. And I think a lot of people miss that, even quite established businesses. And they'll put poor photography out, or they'll put, if they're a product-based business, they have poor photography or no photography, and wonder why no one's buying their stuff. So I'm always, with content, I'm like, your content has to meet an emotional need. And there's two needs, actually. So often it's about meeting a practical need, but when your content isn't connecting with people emotionally, that's just when it's going to kind of sink. And when you can draw people in by publishing relatable content, or content that makes people feel something, that they're emotionally involved, and or they desire, they want to hold that product in their hands, they want to wear the stuff, they want to live in the place, or stay in the Airbnb or whatever it is. That's, I think, what we need to be trying to do. And it's that, that's quite a hard thing to do. And it can be quite a hard thing to do when we're challenged, as small business owners sometimes as well. With budget, we may not have the budget for all the kind of top-notch photography or whatever. But I think that's what we always need to be striving for in our content is we don't have to sell directly that much if people are desiring the product, the service, they want to be part of the community. I was teaching a class this morning actually about Facebook groups and how to sell in Facebook groups, and everybody's like, right, okay, show me the strategies, like, how do I sell? Hang on a minute, let's just go back. Like, the first thing you have to do in a Facebook group is you have to assemble a community of people who like each other and want to be around each other and have got the same problems and want to talk about the same thing. So we were talking, for example, about Erin Condren, I don't know if I'm saying that right, who has planners. She has like a fan Facebook group for the planners, and people are in there like geeking out and saying like, how do I clean this something or other? Somebody was talking about some kind of Franken planning or something. They're all geeking out together over these planners. They desire this product, they desire to be part of this lifestyle, and I think that's the bit that we really have to tap into, and it can be really hard.
Oh, I agree.
You're talking to my heart. You're talking to my heart here, because I actually have a happy planner. So, and it's the same thing. Like, I am part of a Texas happy planner group, and then that turned into a Dallas area happy planner group, and that's what I'm part of. So you brought up a really good point about, you have this like users, you have these audience, these community members that are excited, and that made me think about user generated content and how much are you instructing your clients on leveraging that user generated content. And sometimes it's hard to get people to like, oh, you like my product? Can you talk about it? Can you do a video about it? Can you do this? Right? And how do you organically get your audience to talk about your product online in a way where you're not necessarily having to ask for it, or you ask for it, but you don't ask for it, right? To use a TikTok phrase, like, tell me you love your happy planner without telling me you love your happy planner, right? So.
I was trying to find I think I have one of my planners on my desk, but I've moved it. But again, it's about desire. So if people really desire the product, if they think I'm going to look really cool holding this, or I'm going to, people are going to admire me if I wear this or whatever, people will show it. We'll show it off anyway. So my diary, for example, that's why I was looking for one. People just send me when the diary, because they look beautiful. When their diary, we have a whole build up where we have a wait list, and then we have a pre-launch, and people can choose their covers during the pre-launch. And so people are excited when their planner lands there, and they're sending photos on Instagram stories, and we reshare them and all of this sort of stuff because they look nice. So again, it's about creating a great product and something that people want to be part of. They want to be part of that community, and they want to see themselves as the kind of person that plans and uses this beautiful diary. But the other part of it is, if you want people to give you great customer testimonials, you just have to make it really easy for them. So you have to ask. So, when we send out the planners, we will obviously say, please tag me in a photo, and here's how to do it on Instagram. What I've really learned to get great testimonials, it's so easy, but the reason people don't give great testimonials is because they don't know how to do it. So I have some really great video testimonials of my clients, talking about how much they enjoy the programs or whatever it is. And I have templates for them. So I've created these templates that they can just fill in the gaps. Because the reason, I want to help people and give testimonials, but it just feels like one of those jobs where you're like, I can't be bothered. And so if you give people a testimonial, or you say, let's just jump on a phone call and I'll draft it for you and I'll send it to you, or we'll do it on a Zoom call, I'll do all the editing. So I've got some fantastic video testimonials because I've given my clients a template and I've given them instructions how to do it. The thing I've discovered is that the reason people don't always give you user-generated content, that kind of gold, social proof, is again because they don't know how to do it. So having just launched a new podcast, I wanted to get as many iTunes reviews. Did I just say iTunes? I meant Apple Podcasts as soon as possible. But I thought there'll be some people in my audience I know who won't leave me a review, not because they don't want to, because they don't know how to do it and they can't find it. So I created a video showing people how to do it on a mobile and how to do it on a desktop, and just and we used my clever little messenger bot we put the competition in. So we had a competition as well, and said, if you had a wait list, you want to be the first to hear about the new podcast, and there's a competition. In order to enter, you need to listen to the podcast and leave a review. And if you don't know how to do it, here's a video. And so what I'm always doing is trying to take all the barriers out of the way. When people make it really easy for you to make a review, or they incentivize you, then you do it. But when you're like, I don't really know how to do that, I've now got to go onto Apple Podcasts and work out.
Right.
And I think we underestimate how much people don't know. Just because we know how to do something doesn't mean that the next person does.
Yeah, pretend like you're explaining it to your mother. That's what I do. It's like, okay, Ma, this is what you do. And by the way, so I want to do this because as we've been talking about podcasts, and we talked about this last week. Eric and I were talking about, now the call to action should be, if you have a podcast, no longer to say subscribe to my podcast, because that implies that there's money involved. If you say go follow mine, and that's what they're telling you now to do with Apple. So make sure you do that. But we want to make sure you guys go check out Janet's podcast that she launched. It's amazing. It's number one on the UK, isn't it? In marketing and business or something like it. It's going bonkers over there. So if you want to check out her podcast, make sure you go to courageous-content.captivate.fm, and you'll see all her podcasts there. And there's a little button after you listen to one that says subscribe. Click on that, and then go subscribe to your favorite player or whatever. But I'd love for you guys to go check it out. I would consider it a personal favor if you would go there and leave her a rating and review, because that really helps out a new podcast. Couple comments real quick. I wanted to bring up Hilton's comment. He says, that's brilliant about getting people involved in the creation process, getting them to vote. Love it. And then Marino says, I always ask myself the same question before posting any content. Does this resonate with a problem, an interest, or an exigency, the pie model of my community or tribe? Does this resonate with all of you? It does. And in fact, if you guys are struggling with how in the world to do these cool live videos in lower thirds and everything that I'm doing today, make sure you guys go check out our friends over at Ecamm, who sponsor and make this show possible. You can go to socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. They're amazing. If you can dream up a live video, they can make it happen. So make sure you go check them out. And Grace, somebody that's dear and close to your heart as well. Talk about them a little bit.
Well, today we're doing this awesome deep dive into content creation with our very special guest, the amazing Janet Murray. And there's no better way to distribute that awesome content that you're creating than Restream, especially if you're using live video, audio, or podcasting as part of your marketing strategy. So everything from custom branding to multi-streaming to over 30 online destinations, because why only choose one? Choose them all. Go to all of them like we do, right? Get all the tools you need to create a stunning live video show, live podcast, everything that you need to create this engaging and enticing content right with Restream.
Right. And Samantha, maybe I gave the wrong link, but I'm going to put this one up too, that you can go figure out her podcast. Samantha says it's at janetmurray.co.uk/courageous content podcast. So I think that one works as well. So I want to
and I think you can search for Courageous Content Podcast.
Yeah, she's everywhere.
I use Stitcher, and that's how I found it. So, and Janet's face is on there. So you cannot miss it. It is, like we said, #1 in marketing in the UK and #2 in the business chart. So she just launched too, right? So we did want to talk to you about your podcast. So, we know you just launched it. Tell us about it. Tell us what prompted it and what got you going.
So I had another podcast for 4 years, 450 episodes, and it was going fine, but people were still listening and seemed to enjoy it. But I felt like it had run its course, and when you get those TV shows where they just do too many extra seasons, and I felt like I was in danger of doing that. When you're like, do you know what? It really would have been good if they finished it at season whatever. But I wouldn't say I was like bored particularly, but I was starting to, when you're just kind of knocking them out, and I didn't want to do that. So I decided to park it at beginning of April, and I've been working on something new. And I came up with the Courageous Content Podcast because I feel like, particularly with my audience as well, is that yes, you can have all the tricks and people can show you all the strategy, but if you're fearful about putting yourself out there, things like video, what we're doing now, even just using the tech, like when you were talking there about using Ecamm and Restream and whatever, like it's hard, isn't it, to learn how to do all of that stuff, and sometimes you're learning while you're doing it live. Right. It's the same with Instagram Reels or whatever. So I wanted to create something that addressed like people's challenges around creating the content. So I came up with this idea, the Courageous Content Podcast, and I wanted to be more courageous on it as well. So I've changed the format. So I've got these coaching interviews, which are not just kind of live coaching, but you'll also hear me chip in and then talk about when I wasn't a great coach, or, I should have asked a better question here, or actually I got a bit rattled by that or whatever. So there's a bit of me sort of jumping in. I've got these amazing expert interviews. And one of the things I wanted to do actually was avoid interviewing marketers, because as I was saying earlier, I really look to non-marketers for my content inspiration. So I'm looking at the TikToking nun, or I'm looking at the guy birthing lambs on his farm, or who else? I'm interviewing this girl who's a pianist who used to play at the Savoy Hotel in London, and how she's reinvented herself on TikTok. That's where I get my inspiration from, is looking at almost like ordinary people who just jump on and start creating this amazing content. I think we can learn a lot. And then I've still got the solo episodes, but short form content again. I've been doing so much editing to make them much shorter. I used to just send an interview to my podcast editor and he'd make it sound nice, but actually I thought I'm a writer by trade, and we have this phrase is like, make every word work for its place on the page, and I kind of thought I want to make every word work for its place in people's ears. So a lot shorter episodes, a lot more even in the interviews. If I feel, sometimes you ask somebody a question and they maybe don't fully answer it, or there's some ambiguity, so I'll jump in and then say, actually, I think what they meant here was this, or whatever. So I'm even going to be doing some tutorials on the podcast. So I'm trying to be more courageous in my content, because I think if you are a content marketing person, that's what people know you for, people kind of expect you to lead. And I felt things were getting stale, not just on my podcast, but on other people's content as well. Right. And so I felt like I needed to shake things up a bit. So it launched on Monday, which is a bank holiday in the UK. So it's a holiday. But I was number one in marketing in 9 hours, which is exciting, and number two in business by I think the next day. Although I'm now at number 4, which I'm not happy about. But
not after this. After this show, it's going to go back to number 1. Yeah, it's going to go back.
Hopefully, yeah.
So I wanted to ask this question because, you know, I've been podcasting for a long time. I produce podcasts for like Guy Kawasaki. And so I love podcasting. Eric Fisher and I talked about it last week. If you want to go back and listen to that episode or watch that show, that was a really good one about all the new stuff coming out in Apple. But I want you, Janet, to tell us, you know, how podcasting has helped grow your business. If people are thinking about diving into it, and maybe why business owners should consider starting their own podcast.
So it's hard to even describe how important it's been, but basically most of my paying clients come from my podcast. They find me. We talked before about selling without selling. Well, most of my clients start off on my podcast listeners, and then they get to know me, and sometimes it can be quite quick, but often it is 6 months, a year or whatever before they become a client. But there's no sale to make because they've been listening to the podcast. They know me, they know my teaching, and if they've stuck around that long, they probably like it. So when they join one of my programs or they buy one of my products, the diary is often actually the first thing that they buy. There's no hard sell because it's just a relationship. It's just they become part of the community, and it becomes the natural next step to come and do more with me. So I love podcasting because although I like video and actually doing Instagram Reels, I always thought I wasn't as good. I always thought I wasn't very good at video and that I was better at audio. But I think I've got better at video, but I just love the intimacy of being in someone's ear, and people really do feel like they get to know you. Like people will come up to you at events. I'm sure you've had this as well. And be like, oh, they feel like they know you because there's something so intimate about being in someone's ears, and you can be in their ears for longer as well. So I think it's so powerful. I'm a massive, big fan of podcasting, and I think it's growing and growing, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm interested to see, I'm experimenting with my format. I'm interested to see how other people do the same.
Yeah. And Hilton says, LOL, I am in the funnel. I'll see you in about 6 months. So, you got in your funnel. So there he goes. So Grace, you had one last question and we'll wrap up this show because, man, we got to have Janet back because this has been amazing. But ask your last question.
Yes. I would love to know, since we're talking about content creation, how long does it take you to prepare for each of these podcast episodes, at least when you did in the past and in this new format, this new model that you're doing now?
Oh, my Lord. Well, the new format, when you start something new and it does take you a while. So, and I've been so fussy about it because I just wanted to create. Somebody said to me, like, what are you wanting to do? Take over business or marketing? And I was like, I just want to make a really good podcast. But I mean, hours and hours for these first few episodes. But I think, as with anything, it's about getting into a workflow, isn't it? And once you've done it a few times, the process becomes a lot easier. I do spend, and actually one of my upcoming podcast episodes, we discussed this at length, but I do my own marketing first before I touch any client work, always have done. And I mean, like, I do it in the morning before I do any client work. I keep my mornings free, and I don't see anyone. Like, it makes me sound a bit princessish, but like, I don't see anyone till lunchtime because I prioritize creating my own content. And I feel like I can't very well say to my clients, this is really important, you should be doing it, if I'm doing mine at 11 o'clock at night and I'm not prioritizing it. And I also know, just like that guy, I missed his name. What was the name of the guy who said, I'll see you in 6 months? But
Hilton did, yeah.
Hilton. But it's so true, isn't it? Like that, those hours that you spend today will pay off 6 months, a year down the line. It's hard to see it like that because it's delayed gratification, isn't it? But it's so important. So, Grace, I couldn't even begin to tell you how long they're taking the first one. A couple down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I saw that same advice resonated earlier today on Instagram. Actually, there was one of our friends, Jamie Lieberman. She's a lawyer at #hashtag legal, and she had that same advice where she says that she devotes 3 hours, I don't know if it's a day or week or whatever, on her own marketing for her own business. And she basically said the same thing you did, of like, you got to take care of your business first before you start giving that advice.
Definitely.
And that is our show. We are right up against the hour here. I thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, I could have Janet talk forever. Make sure you guys go check out her podcast that's up on the screen here at courageous-content.captivate.fm. Janet, is there any place else that people can go that you want them to send them to find out more about you?
So my website, which is janetmurray.co.uk, and Instagram, that's where I hang out the most, at janmurrayuk, and it'd be great to say hello over there.
Yeah. And make sure you guys go do that because she's got tons of stuff. Check out her planner if you want to get in the funnel and see her in 6 months, just like Hilton said. But she's got some great stuff. Make sure you check that out. We appreciate all of you. Thank you guys so much. Thanks so much for our sponsors, Ecamm. Find out more about them at socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm, and also Restream at socialmedianewslive.com/Restream. Thank you to my amazing co-host and producer, Grace Duffy, who is amazing. You can check her out over on Restream.io and see all her stuff she's doing. You'll see her speaking all over the place. Thank you, audience. Our next show is at next Friday at on the 11th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central. Make sure you guys go sign up for our text at 903-287-9088. Make sure you get always reminded about that show. And with that, we'll see you guys next time. Appreciate all of you. Thank you, Janet. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.